Hello, and welcome to today's art journaling video. I'm Stephanie Hahn, and today we are going to explore how minimalist art journaling can become your sanctuary in a hectic world. We live in a culture that constantly bombards us with information and stimulation, so creating a simple, mindful art practice can help offset all of that overstimulation. The beauty of a minimalist art journaling practice is that it requires very few supplies, very little time, and absolutely zero artistic talent. To maximize the health and wellness benefits of a minimalist art journaling session, you'll also want to tap into another M word, mindfulness. As you work on your page, practice being fully present to each moment without judgment. Before we dive into supplies and techniques, let's consider why minimalist art journaling works so well for stress relief. Traditional art can feel intimidating for many people. You may have concluded that you weren't creative at some point in your life, perhaps based on some critical feedback from a teacher or parent during childhood. So you might find yourself worrying about making something good enough or beautiful enough anytime you attempt something creative. But mindful art journaling flips this notion upside down. It's not about creating a masterpiece, it's about the process. Three core principles to keep in mind are number one, simplicity. Using limited supplies and techniques helps to reduce decision fatigue. Number two, presence. Focusing mindfully on the sensory experience rather than the outcome, and thinking of the process as play. Play is typically aimless, right? Without any focus on outcome at all. And then three, non judgment. Use art journaling as an opportunity to practice embracing imperfection and releasing self criticism. Really watch your inner dialogue as you work. Keep it positive. Taking a minimalist approach to art journaling so that it's easy and enjoyable will increase the odds that you'll do it more often, hopefully, making it a regular habit in your life. Now, let's talk about supplies. Remember, the goal is to remove barriers to creating, so I recommend keeping your toolkit intentionally small. Now, the irony is that I have collected a rather large stash of art supplies myself back when I thought having more supplies would boost my creativity. But I quickly discovered that wasn't what happened at all. Instead, I felt overwhelmed anytime I had some time for creativity, sometimes to the point that I actually used up all of the time I had thinking about what to do and never getting around to actually making anything. I've since learned that less is more. The supplies you choose might be different than the ones I use. It will depend on your preferences or maybe what you already own or have easy access to. The only things that you absolutely need are a piece of paper of some kind and at least one pen or pencil or other mark making tool. It's perfectly fine to work in just one color and simply write and doodle with that one tool. That's probably the absolute simplest approach. Your piece of paper might be in a bound journal or it might be loose. It might be plain or it might be lined or have dots like in a bullet journal. And it's really up to you. I like to also add color in my art journal, and my preferred supply for that most of the time is watercolor paint because of its randomness and unpredictability, at least the way I use them. Other options for adding color are pencil crayons, markers, crayons, acrylic paint, and there's so much more. But for minimalist art journaling, I recommend choosing just one of these and sticking with that one supply for at least a while when you're adding color. Remember, the goal is to keep things simple. For today's video, I'm going to be using just plain paper watercolor weight that's in my art journal. I'm going to be using watercolor paint, a travel watercolor brush, because that's what I have on hand right now here in New Zealand when I'm visiting my daughter, paper towel, and a black permanent pen. Ideally, if you're using a journal, it would be great if it lies flat when open and has paper that is sturdy enough that it won't immediately buckle with watercolor if that's what you're using. But keep in mind that if you are just using a regular notebook, like with office paper, you might want to avoid watercolors and use dry media like pencil crayons instead. So for the watercolor palettes today, I've got just my regular travel watercolor palette, but then I also have this fun one that I picked up in New Zealand that I'll be showing you that just has ocean colors. And there really is simplicity to working with a limited color palette. And that's pretty neat that I found an actual product that only has one color palette. But you can use a limited color palette even if you're working with a regular collection of basic colors. Now for the fun part. Let's explore some minimalist art journaling techniques that absolutely anyone can do. One fun thing that I like to do is use watercolor to create a background so that I am not facing a blank page. So, for the first idea for minimalist art journaling, using this idea of watercolor as a background, we are going to create a wash of random colors on the page. I'm going to start actually over here because I'm going to be doing a few. So I'll take my regular watercolor palette to start with. And to keep things simple, I am going to focus on just a few colors. I think I will do some yellow. So I'm just picking up some color, and it's literally like random on my. Oh, did you see I just got some splash there by accident? That's great. Dab that off as necessary, grab a different color of yellow. Let the pools of color touch so that they begin to magically kind of blend together. It's a bit like just scribbling as a very young child might. And I'm going to add some orange, keeping it all in this sort of yellow, orange, red family, I think I'll do. Now, this particular one, I'm going to add some of this red, is getting fairly dark, which is fun, but not super conducive to if you wanted to do a lot of writing on the page. So in art journaling, sometimes you're writing like you would in a regular journal, maybe paragraphs of information, and then other times you might have no words at all, or you might have some words. A page like this is more conducive to probably smaller amounts of words. Um, but on this page over here, let's do a sample maybe with the same color groupings just to show using more water and less color to try and make it more of a paler background so that it's about adding more water. So it ends up being more of a wash, a pale wash that will be more conducive to actually writing lots of words. With the red, I'm going to have to do a lot of water to make sure it doesn't end up too dark. All right. You can also take your napkin if you've got a lot of water and dab it, and then you sometimes get a little bit of pattern too. So really just trying to put some color down on the page so that you don't have a blank page. And once again, Zoe's followed me to New Zealand. I've got some more dog hair. It's just part of my art. And one of the great things about this particular art journal that I have here, which is the Grumbacher mixed media with the in and out pages, is that it allows me to remove a page and set it aside to dry while I work on something else. And then I can pop it back in whatever spot in the book that I'd like. You might create multiple watercolor backgrounds like this on lots of pages in one sitting and then leave them to dry so that you have ready made pages to come back and just do writing, journaling on other days. So, next, I'm going to show you another way to keep it really simple, even simpler than this here, by doing the same kind of random background, but this time we're going to use this super limited palette, the ocean colors that I got at the Kmart in Christchurch here in New Zealand. For this page, I'm going to use just shades of blue. I think I'll start with my lighter color. I'll start with that one because that's where the water fell. And for this one, I'm not going to be too fussy about if it's dark or light. We'll just see what happens. I just kind of dab off and squeeze a little bit on the paper towel when I'm switching colors. And I'm working as quickly as I can because that I find gives me less opportunity to overthink, but also gives opportunity for the watercolors to blend together because it's still wet. Get some neat running together. So there's just less decisions to make if you choose a really limited palette because you know it's all going to easily and seamlessly blend together. Just squeeze some more water on there without adding any more paint. And I'm just playing. I didn't plan this in advance, just came to me. Now I'm swirling. So I encourage you to just play like this. Add the color, let your mind be quiet and your body relaxed, and just scribble and play. All right. So as you can see, different look, but again, just like a page of smeared color as a background for later doodling. So I'm going to pull that one out, set it aside to dry. All right. So that was 3 versions of what I call surprise me color backgrounds. And now another one. This time I'm going to add water to the page first. So I'm squeezing my brush and I'm just going to try and get the whole page or most of the page covered in water. And then I feel like for this one I'm going to use the blue again. It's new, so it feels exciting and fun. Maybe this time I'll work in some of the turquoise and green though. So then I'm just taking the color and see how when you put it on the page, it runs in the wet spots. So again, working quickly, but I want to let it be really wet and just make dots or lines. This is my favorite color right here. I'm not very adept at color mixing. Haven't played much with color mixing, so I love it. This is just, I'm sure you can make this color with other colors, but I love that it's just right here in my palette box now. All right, I'm going to grab other colors and just keep letting it surprise me. But rather than doing like adding paint to my brush and then bringing it onto the dry page, we're using the wet page this time, dropping it and letting it spread. And maybe I'll just do paler blue. More dots. Not a lot of water there. Squeeze some more out. And so on this page, I've left a little bit more white space. And there's quite a bit of water there. I'm going to use, which I could totally leave to dry, but I am going to use my Kleenex or my napkin and pick some of it up to help it dry a bit quicker. But again, see how I'm getting some patterns with my napkin? That's kind of fun too. Maybe I'll spontaneously continue with that here. Again, this is you watching the evolution of play for me, where I didn't have that exactly planned. I'm just going with it. So there we have another background already. Set that one aside as well to dry. Now my next idea is a completely different. I mean, it's still a background in watercolor, but rather than the random, there's going to be a little bit more structure to this one. This is inspired by something I saw when I toured a Waldorf school when my kids were small. They used these awesome, like beeswax wide crayons to draw bands of color across a page in a notebook like this. And then they would use those pages for math or anything. And I felt like it just made math look very creative and fun. So, based off that inspiration, I'm going to also be doing bands of color that the intention is that it's just a background that you can then come back later and actually journal, like full sentences, paragraphs down the page. You'll want to keep it reasonably transparent, not super dark. I'm just going to go across the page. I haven't practiced this in advance, so again, you're watching me live play here. And I quite like how when the two touched, there's a little bit of bleeding. God, which one of those I did. 'Cause this one's pretty dark. So I'm going to add some more water and try and pull it down. And I'm not going to worry too much if each line is the same height. And also, I might write, 2 lines of text in each of these bands. We'll see. I'm just going to carry on with this idea going further down the page. You'll make this one a bit of a center band, some variety. So I'm using the limited color palette again, but depending on your mood, you could use, primary colors and make it like a rainbow going down the page if you like, or choose any other combination that appeals to you. You can make it striped. I keep forgetting which one I'm using. The green's easy to remember. I'll use my favorite one at least one more time here. Maybe I'll use it to finish the bottom. So there we go. A more symmetrical, structured page for writing. So I'm going to put that page aside to dry. So keeping with that same theme about doing repetitive structured lines on the page in watercolor for later actually writing on, I just finished like the bands of straight across, very traditional. You could also do diagonal across the page. I'm going to experiment with wavy lines, and I'm going to do it in this blue palette again because that seems very fitting. Kind of a wavy situation here. We'll see how this turns out. Again, just an idea I had. I haven't tried it yet or played with it. See how, as I'm going down, my waves are sort of changing a little bit in shape. I've got some bleeding where the colors touch the next one. I love all this randomness. So even if you are a professional artist, art journaling is just a really great place to allow yourself to relax and create with no expectation, no pressure, and to really play with your supplies and get to know them. Now, this is maybe running a little more than I would like here because I've got a lot of water. So I'm going to come in again lightly with my paper towel and pick some of that out. I love the randomness that I get with paper towel. All right, I'm going to do my favorite again. I am amazed at how rich the colors are in this palette from Kmart in New Zealand. It is like so rich. These colors are so rich. And this little palette, I got, I feel like I got this and a little mini watercolor journal for like $11. So inexpensive. All right. So there's one more idea. Set that one aside to dry. And then the final option that I'm going to share today is the opposite. Whereas what we've been doing so far is randomly creating watercolor patterns on the page so that we don't face a blank page. And then we'll go back and add marks and words later. This approach, we are going to mindfully doodle first and then add color. I am going to do a spiral on this page, adding my marks first. I'm gonna fill this whole page. And then just filling in relaxing, repetitive marks of some kind. Now, this could be a very detailed doodling page. I'm doing very broad, big shapes and spaces here. You could start like this and then go back in and add patterns in all these sections. You could just leave it black and white, but for this demo, I was going to show drawing first, then adding color. So let's swap out back to my classic color palette. I tend to like to work in the brighter shades, but let me challenge myself to do something earthy on this page. So let's do like the browns and the greens. I'm just going to drop a little bit of water in each of those. I think I'm going to start. I'm overthinking this. I'm going to just add color. My vision is I'm going to put the darker brown in the center, but I'm going to start with my paler brown in this whole area. I'm going to take my darker brown, put it in the middle. And I'm going to transition to the green. Again, this could be any colors, any design. The idea was simply that I wanted to plant the seed that we don't always have to start with a random watercolor bottom. Sometimes we add color later. And sometimes you might actually have like very detailed drawings and come in and almost make your own coloring page and get very detailed and precise with your addition of color. My personal preference is in my play to pretty much avoid anything precise. I'm pretty precise with my paid work, and I want my art journaling to be a time where I get to rest that part of my brain. I think I'm gonna add some of this earthy goldy yellow to as well. Transition from my brown out to my green. All right, so trying not to overthink it too much. Gonna do my favorite technique and come back in with my very wet and messy paper towel. I'm gonna try to pick up some of this extra green around the edge. Got a little bit of my favorite paper towel texture. And there we have it. All right, so nothing is a work of art on its own, and nor was it intended to be. These are perfect examples of playing in an art journal and creating pages that are filled with random marks and surprises. I'm going to let these watercolors dry, and then I will be back to give you some ideas about mark making that we can do on these pages. So I'm just going to demonstrate on this watercolor background, one of the pale ones that I created, how I might use this to overcome blank page, right? How I use this to inspire my doodling. I often like to look at the shapes that have appeared naturally in the watercolor and then use those to divide the page. So sometimes following the lines of the watercolor paint, and then sometimes just following my heart's desire. And for this, I think I'm going to draw lines that start and end on an edge of the page, keeping my lines curvy and soft and soothing. All right. And I think I'll make a feature on my page or a circle. I'm feeling like this looks like a spot that feels like a circle spot. I'm going to use my mug to help me draw it. I'm not concerning myself with precision. I'll just color that in freehand. Make it a little bit more round, but again, being very forgiving, not seeking perfection here at all. Like in terms of a perfect circle, I mean. I go around anywhere that the lines meet, curve the lines, rounding to make them look like a soft intersection, like the connection of neurons, like neurons in the brain. Lines sometimes a bit thicker and thinner and small. This kind of work can be time consuming. So this is where you decide how much time you have in a given day and can work away at it in little bits. So I often work on my art journaling pages in stages, background, and then adding detail, shapes, doodling, and then adding words. At this point, you can leave it or you can add patterning in some sections. You might like to date your pieces. I usually don't. Could add words to your pieces. Not necessarily worrying if what you write is even legible. So keeping the designs contained within the sections that I drew in the beginning. This gives me some boundaries to work within. I often like to work in threes. See, I've got three line sections, three spirals. So you can stop at any time or keep going. Move back and adding sort of, sort of shading to the words so that they pop a little. So you could carry on and fill in the whole page if you like. I think I am going to leave it there. Remember, the focus in minimalist art journaling is on process, not outcome. If you're judging your work, gently bring your awareness back to the sensations in the present moment and let the negative thoughts go. I encourage you to start today with whatever supplies you have on hand. I hope that by making art journaling simple and easy, these minimalist ideas will help you art journal more often, perhaps even daily. There's something magical about pausing for even just a brief bit of creative expression each day. As a side note, I did want to mention please don't let this minimalist approach confine you. Remember, the goal is to keep it simple so that it supports you in expressing your creativity. But you might find that once you get creating using really simple supplies and techniques, that you actually desire to make things more complex. You might feel called, for example, to use multiple types of supplies on one page, or to spend a really long time working on something intricate. And if that happens, I say go for it. This is your art journaling practice, and it's important to pay attention to those inner promptings to allow creativity to really flow and flourish. Please let me know in the comments below how you make out with these ideas. May our paths cross again very soon. Thank you for spending this time with me today.